When you think of clean entertainment, think of Endure Entertainment. When you think of Endure Entertainment, think of clean entertainment. The Endure Entertainment television personalities. We are the A-Team. We're more than just a team. We're family. Look at all of the different syndicated podcast directories we are on. Go ahead and download those apps so you don't miss our shows on the go. Endure Entertainment LLC started October 2021. Now we're in 17 countries outside of the United States. Featured in CBS, Fox, and NBC. Gospel Choice Music Awards nominated for Independent Broadcast Network of the Year. We do more than just TV. We also do virtual concert extravaganzas. Our last one this past January was off the chain. You can look at our shows, virtual concert, and TV 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at EndureEntertainment.live. Radio. Next coming up is going to be the radio station.
All right. Let's see. I think I've got it all actually down tonight somewhat. Get some of those lights up. All right. I think I've got it now. But, well, almost had it. I like to start off everybody with something completely boring. But tonight, what I was going to talk about is, I'm sure everybody knows by now, in the last week, Biden has moved to pardon lots of folks that have been charged with, like, simple marijuana possession, which is a bigger move towards a larger picture. I don't know how else to put that right there, but so you got to think about it, and it really got me into thinking a little bit about, okay, well, we've got this going on. Where does it come into the fact of legalizing marijuana? Now, I always have to say in each thing I do that I do not smoke marijuana. It just does not work for me. Makes me paranoid with my personality, I guess. I mean, I've never really been a smoker because I've never really had like that good experience with it. But as a heavy drinker, that's probably why. But I can't get into all that because I really don't know what I'm talking about if I do. But with that said, the medical benefits are fascinating, to say the least. I mean, there's people out there going through the chemo treatments and stuff like that. I know for a fact when my mom was going through her treatments for her breast cancer, gone metastatic, but I mean, the sickness that goes along with, let's face it for what it is. Radiation and chemo is really a form of poison. I mean, so what's the lesser of two evils right there? But to get better into it, I had talked to a lady months ago that her son had passed away from smoking a marijuana joint. I hate it when people say that, but anyway, from smoking a joint, and it was no laughing matter there that the young man was only about 32 years old, I believe it was. And because the marijuana had been laced with fentanyl, he passed away and he's no longer with us. And that's something to consider in this whole bigger picture here when it comes to the legalization of marijuana, because that's one area of stopping some of the BS fentanyl spread that goes on. Because you have to think about it. Okay, if it's legalized, it's got to go through the FDA. It's got to go through certain chains. There's going to be somebody like a RJ Reynolds, or I don't know who all would produce it. I know that as far as I remember, RJ Reynolds was already set up for it years ago, which, to me is a good thing. So if it's produced on that kind of level, What you have to understand is that it's going to be scrutinized. So we're kicking some of the bad eggs out and keeping the good eggs. Um, I know people in my life who have flat out said that they wouldn't even drink if they could just smoke legally or go buy it at the store or whatever else. And that's another route to take and look at this. Is marijuana dangerous? Is it more dangerous, or is alcohol more dangerous? Or, what are the facts on all this? Because that's where everybody gets confused. When I was growing up in the 80s and early 90s, it was, marijuana's bad. It's a gateway drug. And, you know, all that rigmarole. But now what we're seeing is 80% of the overdoses in the U.S. period this year alone has been 80% fentanyl, and a lot of those are deaths. So to me that's pretty scary. Now we go into alcohol, and even past all the alcohol related, there are alcohol overdoses. It's called alcohol poisoning, and overdoses and deaths. I think it was 80,000 or something like that last year, just from the overdoses. And then if you add into that and you take the car accidents, fatalities, 55% of car accident fatalities were because alcohol was involved in the accident. So I want to make it strongly known that I don't preach against alcohol. It doesn't work for me. It never worked for me. It almost killed me. I was almost one of those stats. And grace of God, I'm here. It's a miracle. It really is a miracle. So you can praise Jesus on that one. There is no rhyme or reason, medical answer that I'm here. And I want to drill that in every time because there is no joking to it. You can't argue with the facts of it. I couldn't argue with the facts of it. And, sometimes it's really hard to sit there and think, okay, what did I do to deserve this miracle? What did I do? And that's why I've taken my journey into, talking about it and speaking to people and stuff like that. But I don't do this nonsense thing. I look how cool I am now. Uh, Look at what I've got. Because the true fact is, I wouldn't have anything if it wasn't for, the miracle of life that God gave me. So I'm not hyper focused on, the cars and the other knickknacks that come along with it. Because what good is any of that if you're not able to enjoy it anyway? I mean, it's just nonsensical right there. But I wanted to go on about this because it came to my attention in the last couple of days that somebody actually told me that it's a myth that some weed is being laced with fentanyl. And that's absolutely not a myth. If I hadn't had experience with it factually, I wouldn't know it. I wouldn't even bother with speaking on it. But and so here we go when it goes to it. Several social media posts and local news reports warn of fentanyl laced marijuana or cannabis. While isolated case reports suggest that the cannabis may sometimes contain fentanyl, most reports argue that this is likely an urban legend or a very rare occurrence. It's getting less rare. That's a problem with this snowball effect that we're having. It's to read this best. This is by Alyssa Peckman, PhD, BCPP, and lots of initials. It is common for drug dealers to lace other drugs, such as prescription painkillers, with fentanyl. This because of its comparatively low cost. However, it can intensify the side effects of other drugs and increase the risk of overdose. Fentanyl is the leading cause of drug overdoses in the United States, and some people who overdose do not know they are using fentanyl. However, as fentanyl remains more expensive than cannabis, fentanyl-laced cannabis would not make financial sense. That's where she's wrong. And I'm going to tell you why it makes financial sense. If back in the day when I was younger, everybody would go to the guy who has the best weed. I mean, that only just makes sense. This is almost common sense, Ben and Jerry's to me has the best ice cream. So to look at the Briars aisle, or Briars, refrigerators. No, not necessarily. So I mean, it's just like that. And think about it. Okay, well, this dude he sprinkles a little bit of fentanyl on there, and it's really comparatively a really good high that these people are getting, not knowing that I mean, the smallest, we're talking grains of salt amounts of fentanyl can kill somebody. So, to me, the only way somebody would report this was a myth would be it depends on who their paper or their articles are sponsored by. It really does. If you're looking at a lot of things, when you have, and there is a truth, I'm not a conspiracy guy, but big pharma and stuff like that, when they're involved, one of the main reasons marijuana is not legal in Kentucky now, and I know this from factual studies, and this goes back a long time in my life, is that big alcohol, and we're right in central Kentucky. I mean, I am. And you've got big alcohol, the Maker's Mark, the bourbons, the Anheuser Busches. You've got everything. Why wouldn't they want marijuana to be legal? Because it would flat out cut into their bottom line. So it's more reasonable, and uh, let's just say, let's call it self awareness, um, and using some emotional intelligence here to go, okay, well, that makes sense. Well, then, why would somebody like Mitch McConnell, for example, be so against marijuana legalization? Well, look who his biggest pack donors are, and that would be, again, the bourbon companies, the Anheuser-Busch, and things like that. I mean, it's a conflict of interest, sure, but that doesn't seem to matter with modern day politics. And on a side note with Mitch, what Trump said about him having a death wish was ridiculously unfair, and I don't even know if Trump knew what he was saying in that some of his people might take that very seriously, which put a lot of the powers that be in the police forces and stuff like that they have to be on alert for what if something happens to Mitch McConnell. Where they say your words will never hurt me, sticks and stones break your bones, but your words will never hurt me. Nah, I strongly disagree. Um, I've heard that two ways, by the way, but I don't need to go into all that. Words can hurt and be destructive all throughout history. When you've got not even Trump, let's go into Jim Jones, Adolf, what's his face, Mussolini, Stalin, the list goes on and on and on and on. Saddam Hussein. Their words can be words of war, insurrection that's happened. And from what I read the other days, there's an underground movement now for a civil war. For what I hate to say, as I've said before in another podcast, I wouldn't have thought that 1991 that Axl Rose would be so prolific in what he had to say back when with the song Civil War. But my suggestion would be go back and listen to it, and make your own assumption from there. Oh, and by the way, somebody wrote and asked me what my hat was last week. It's actually a Yankees hat. It's just blacked out. As I realize now that I'm seeing what's on my camera, I look more like the modern day Eminem, and I did not realize that and do that on purpose. But nothing against Eminem. I always kind of liked him. We've been in the same department of struggles, and that's about the only thing in common. Um, All right, so I got onto that, and hopefully it's a good understanding of why that some weed is laced with fentanyl. It's not all, but even that risk of let's say it's 10% of all the marijuana out there, and they're calling that a comparatively small amount. So that's still a ton of marijuana across the United States. And unfair as it is, it's just the truth. Business is business, right? That's what they say. Business is business. Okay. But if you got that small little chance to jump ahead and make a little bit more profit, I mean, this is all throughout history. This is simple economics. They're going to do that to increase profit. So if fentanyl's still a little bit cheaper than cannabis, as this article said, what's a little bit? What's a lot? Fentanyl's dirt cheap. It's cheaper than heroin. It's cheaper than cocaine. It's cheaper than being an alcoholic. I hate that word. Catch me using it once in a while. But I don't like to use the words addict or alcoholic. We're all children of God who made some mistakes. Some of them were pretty big. So that gets us into another question people ask is, what is fentanyl? Because, I can tell you that 20 today's the anniversary of my mom's death. I didn't even put that together. 27 years today. That's not a reason to celebrate. She was a great woman. Never smoked, never did drugs, just so that's clear. I didn't get any of that from her or my dad, for that matter. I wasn't raised in that environment, so I go against the nature and nurture thing. So let's keep going here. I just need to correct myself. I don't go against the nurture thing because of some issues I had to deal with that led to PTSD, and that's violence and or physical and mental abuse, which was not from my mother, and I don't ever go there with that. But I'll get into that at another time too. Explain the root cause and effect of some use disorders, which is really it's a prevalent thing. All right, so fentanyl is a potent opioid that a person can only acquire through a medical prescription. Now, that's not true, as we all know now. I mean, it's coming from, again, another thing is somebody was telling me how much of it's coming through Mexico, and this is what happened because we didn't build the wall. This is not that argument. A lot of it, most of it is coming from overseas, India, China, and it's making its way, whether it's the East Coast, the West Coast, southern borders, or anything else. It's really, that's not the argument here. It's getting through, and it is coming through the East Coast as well. It's not just a thing where we say, okay, that border wall. That's a convenient excuse. It's not a way to deal with the problem. So, to get into this for what it is, prescription fentanyl is safe when taken under as instructed under the guidance of healthcare professionals. However, illegally manufactured fentanyl is on the rise. In recent years, it has become a leading cause of drug overdoses. And that the overdoses often happen when a person uses fentanyl alongside other drugs, but it can cause an overdose on its own, which is more prevalent. I was trying to see when this was written. This was written May 30th of this year, so she's a little bit behind. As illegally manufactured fentanyl is readily available, it's also less expensive and more accessible than some other opioids. Some drug dealers now press fentanyl into pills to make it look like an opioid prescription or to increase the high a person experiences with other opioids. Several media reports now also claim the drug dealers laced cannabis with fentanyl. We just went through that. Very little evidence supports this claim. Well, that's because they're not getting. This is such a mess. The numbers on the alcohol-related deaths, fentanyl-related deaths, and things like that are skewed because I don't know if you've ever seen a death certificate. I've had to deal with them from my parents that no matter that my dad, for example, wasn't an active. What all did they list? I mean, okay, he was shot in World War II. They shot by his ex-wife several times, and believe me, we weren't a rural raised family, so this was all like suburban nightmare stuff. But I wasn't alive when all this happened, and so beyond that, he was also where he was an inspector in some coal mines in Kentucky to thwart a what he told me one time was dealing with the mines blowing up in the 70s because people would go in there and either they're sneaking in cigarettes or weed, and you get that in a gas pocket, the whole mine blows up. And that's just what was going on. But anyway, so black lung was listed on there, and that's when you inhale coal dust, which a lot of Eastern Kentucky is dealing with the ramifications of that, of years and years of coal mining. And prayers for those guys. They were kind of left out in the cold when all this all went south. And it's another thing for another time, of course. All right. So when you're looking at that, and you're looking at the two, really, you got to think, why would somebody put fentanyl on heroin? You can overdose on heroin alone. A lot of people have in the past, but when you get into it now and you start studying it, and this blew me away, is it's not that many. Cocaine, for example, I always think back to Len Bias out of, I believe he was out of North Carolina, basketball player, supposed to be the next Jordan, but he was snorting cocaine and he did a certain amount one night and then did the same amount the next night and it killed him. It's because cocaine is what they call a zero tolerance drug, is you never actually gain a tolerance of it that can't drop back down to a zero tolerance the next day. It's funky donkey chemistry stuff, but it's true. But that's what killed Len Bias before he ever got to play. But again, not that many people are dying of cocaine anymore. It's just not in vogue. It just is what it is. I don't know how else to explain it. Here's a case study from 2020. This is a 50-year-old male seeking treatment for opioid use disorder. His urine screens continued to test positive for fentanyl, but he claimed he was only to be using cannabis. This suggests that he may have been using fentanyl-laced cannabis. When he stopped using cannabis, his urine stopped testing positive for fentanyl. However, the man had a history of opioid use and might have been using fentanyl as an alternative source of opioids rather than using fentanyl-laced cannabis. By the way, if you didn't put that together already, adding fentanyl to weed is going to make that weed addictive, because marijuana in itself is not an addictive drug. That's on the fence. People will argue that. Physically, it's not. It's not. Mentally, it can be if you get yourself. It's a placebo effect. So yeah, mentally, mind over matter is all I can say right there. All right. So in 2022 at a conference, one of the parties called fentanyl-laced cannabis a myth promoted by the media and law enforcement. Again, that's not all true. I mean, if they're talking about every case, there's no real numbers on this, so it's hard to sit there and say. But to say that it's an urban legend or a myth is actual dangerous rhetoric to be spreading. I mean, that's really kind of simpleton ignorance is the best way to put that. Thank you. So what they're using for the secondary here is instead stories of people overdosing on fentanyl while using cannabis might be because the person uses opioids while they're using cannabis. Is that possible? Absolutely. Is it possible that people are drinking while they're smoking pot? Absolutely. I don't need to go down the whole list. Okay. Let's go on to the alcohol. And this is my subject. I obviously know a lot about it from my history, which is, it's par for the course. It's stuff, in doing this, I have to go through that and talk about it and go back through it again. I don't do any 12-step programs or things like that. It's been a long time since I've drank alcohol. I don't miss it. I don't have any recurrent nightmares or persistent thoughts of drinking or anything else that goes along with it, which ends up being more of a mental health disorder than just what they've labeled into what's called alcoholism now. And you're going to see that term. It's kind of been what they'd say played out. So you're going to hear a lot more about alcohol use disorder, and or if somebody with a opioid addiction right there, it's turned into substance use disorder. So there's not going to be any more addiction to alcohol, which I agree, because it's so stigmatized and so all over the place. It makes it just hard to understand it. All right. So when we go into looking at alcohol as compared to marijuana here, and it says beer, wine, and mixed drinks are embedded. in the U.S. They're used recreationally, socially, and even to de-stress. Due to the widespread and legal use of alcohol, it is often compared to marijuana, which is illegal in the U.S. Defenders of pot often say it's not as bad as alcohol, and alcohol is legal. Why isn't marijuana legal? That's a good point. It is true. Which is worse for your health, marijuana or alcohol? To answer these questions, I went into the DSM-4, which is like the Bible for psychiatrists and psychologists. Okay. Um, Here's the findings from the psychiatrist. I didn't print off their name. I only use like factual, like work studies from either Psychology Today. I don't use anything that's opinion pieces when I talk about the different substance uses. Which, with anything, there can be a hair of opinion no matter how you look at it. So, but here's what this doctor found is prolonged and consistent use of alcohol affects nearly every organ of the body. So alcohol basically damages every organ of the body. Keep in mind your brain's an organ as well. So with alcohol, it's especially the gastrointestinal tract. I know that I had a GI bleed that almost killed me as well. I rarely talk about that, but I had to have scraping. That's what led to all sorts of other problems with ammonia on my head. And I don't know the specifics of it. I'm not a medical doctor, but I kind of know, kind of don't know the exact cause and case and where everything else went to. I just know my whole body was shutting down. All right. So it can also cause ulcers, which I can check those two. Liver cirrhosis, can check that one. Pancreatitis, can check that one. Hypertension, can check that one. Muscle weakness, can check that one. Memory impairment, I can check that one. The other symptoms that are included in here, and this is actually important to watch for. If you think somebody might be in danger, having some use disorders with alcohol in particular, like are they shaking in the morning? Is it like, I just I haven't smoked yet. I haven't had my coffee yet. I mean, there's all sorts of, I hear it all the time. But once you get to that point where you're getting the tremors, it's very rough. Like I got to the point where I couldn't hold a pen and sign my name. And I remember that happened to me one time at an airport in Las Vegas, and I couldn't sign my boarding pass to get onto the plane because one, I was already 3 days late for the plane that already took off, and two, I was coming down pretty hard when I was at the airport. And it's not fun, man. It's actually a horrible thing to think about, and that's another reason I don't drink is I don't miss that stuff. You're constantly, when you're very, very physically addicted, you're constantly in this effect of being scared to death, but too drunk to know better. And that's the best way I can put it. All right. So we've got, all right, other symptoms that include tremor, unsteady gait, that's walking, of course, insomnia, and erectile dysfunction. With the insomnia, I do know that one well because a lot of mine is you're so preoccupied with, what time's the liquor store open or something like that. Because if you have too good of a night, and especially if you're with other people and stuff like that, and too good of a night, and then you realize, you know what, I don't have enough alcohol to not start detox in the morning. So you get really, really preoccupied with the thoughts of detox. And if you're like me, you were at the liquor store at 7 in the morning. I mean, that is what happens. That's what happened to me. And drinkers fall more and cause accidents, which is true. I fell off of a roof. True story. I'll put those pictures up when I get a chance. I decided to clean out the gutters. And yeah, I tumbled straight off the roof. And I'll tell you this, I landed on a 12 by 12, 12 by 10 concrete patio, and the rest of the whole big yard is grass. But I picked that one spot, and man, my whole leg inside was like, I was already having liver failure and didn't realize it, but it was all like this purple, nasty, yellow, green bruise. It was, crazy. Like covered half my body. But all right. So alcohol, I used this stat earlier, and they used it again in here. Alcohol is related to 55% of fatal auto accidents. half of all murders and their victims are believed to involve alcohol. Wow. Half of all murderers and their victims are believed to involve alcohol. That is something I did not know. That's fascinating, and I will delve more into that. And maybe get into that next week. I have some interviews coming up, and I'll talk about that later. But furthermore, alcohol leads to disinhibition, 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 disinhibition. I've never seen that written out. I mean, I've used it. I don't recall even spelling it. But alcohol leads to disinhibition of feelings of sadness and aggression, which can lead to suicide. I did know that. For example, I've heard it referred to as liquid courage many times over the years. And say things, do things, and I'll add to this is it increases your, depending on who you are, what you know, education level, and so on and so on, but increases your ability to manipulate, and that's really on any level right there. I know some people that have not graduated past the seventh grade and who are just masters. I mean, it always gets me. It's crazy how intelligent these people are and don't even know it. And it's wild. I mean, I know some people who are pretty much I'd say genius level or close to it, and yeah, but with alcohol and substances, they can. What did they used to say? Sell snow to a snowman or something. I'm trying to think of one of the terms that's not really borderline racist, but I can't come to one right now. But I really can't. All right. All right. So now let's go into. We talked about the suicide, the murder rate, the victims. You got to think of the fatal car accidents. 55% is alcohol involved. I do wonder, just thinking through psychology right now, I do wonder if that number is going to change. It shouldn't in trying to do math, but I know another thing that's become a huge issue is texting and driving, or even the one time I had an accident. I rarely, I mean, rarely ever drove while drinking, but I was at a bar was a mile away from my house at the most, maybe less. And so I was driving back and reached down to get my phone, and a fire hydrant jumped in front of me, or at least that's the excuse I used at the time. So I do see that your inhibitions. That's spelled wrong. That's why I got so screwed up on it. Okay. Sorry. I get so sidetracked because I think I like 10 things at once. All right. But here's what it comes to when it comes to cannabis, marijuana. On the other hand, here's the dangers, if you will, of marijuana. It increases appetite, which can lead to obesity, dry mouth, which makes you thirsty, tachycardia. Tachycardia is what it is. Tachycardia. Yeah, I can't believe I'm having so much trouble tonight. I could write it 100 miles an hour. Sometimes when I see these medical terms, this one is spelled right, but it's tachycardia. Euphoria. We all know what that is. Sedation can make you tired, which could be, that's not necessarily good when you're driving. And a slowed sense of time, which again is not good when you're driving. So I'm going to say to a lesser extent, from everything it looks like to me, because there's nothing really backing it up, but I'm going to say that it could probably be dangerous if you're too stoned to get out and drive around. But so that should be taken into effect, obviously. It's better to abstain and drive, and that's more than just my thoughts on it. That's the truth. It's proven. This goes back years and years. I can remember when Mothers Against Drunk Driving started. They called it MAD program. There's a DARE program with Nancy Reagan. Gosh, it's so much that we've gotten away from. All right, now, after the slowed sense of time, which again, man, you got to think about it right there. If your timing is slowed down, somebody brake checks you, for example, which they're really bad about doing here in Kentucky, and North Carolina is actually worse on that one, because everybody thinks they're NASCAR drivers, and a lot of the highways and byways on North Carolina. And I'm speaking specifically of those who watch it and are from there. Is 52, I think, is one of the world's worst places for um, driving, unless you're, trained by Dale Earnhardt Jr. or something. I don't know. All right. So, and now there's one thing that I think this is a dummy fact, because I've always thought this myself, even when it came to vaping. It can also cause a chronic cough or throat problems due to smoking, of course. So if you're using edible marijuanas, you can throw that one out. But edible marijuana. Um, I mean, when vaping first started, electronic cigarettes were a big thing, and this is probably about 2010 or so. And I can remember a sister of mine had got me in e-cigarettes, what they call them, and I don't even know if those are still around, honestly. But they came with a charger and everything. So um, after those came out, I can remember, like, after about a week, I felt like I couldn't breathe. I mean, I was coughing nonstop, and it ends up it was worse for you than actually smoking. Because the thing is, again, mind over matter is you're thinking you got to smoke it more, and it's creating this. I don't know if you ever been behind a car on, like, at a stoplight or something like that, and you see like this cloud of smoke come out of the car where you think it's on fire. I mean, most of the time that's somebody vaping, because they take such a huge amount when they do that. I don't know why. I have not actually vaped, but I do know that anything you're inhaling that's not oxygen is not really good for you. Um, okay, so what she says here, and I agree with it. These are the symptoms and consequences of cannabis and alcohol, according to the DSM-4. That is, like I said earlier, the Bible of the psychiatric community. Now that you've read them yourself, see what you think, and I'll make this available on my Facebook page, which is scrolling at the bottom, because I just think that's so interesting and something that should be paid attention to. But to round about this tonight, I know I'm a little bit slow. I've been working on homework this week. It's a lot, but that's okay. In updates, I'm 4.0 student. They write it up as higher than that, because I think I like had a 4.3 something, and that's just, it doesn't make a difference. I don't even know why they do it. I mean, I understand that it helps if you've got if you're like stuck on a D C line or a B A line, and then it gets you up, but you can't really get higher than that. It's not bragging. It's just I take this trip into psychology very seriously, because when God gave me my life, and I mean this life that I live now, that part of me, when it used to be so trivial to me when everybody would say that part of me is dead. No, I mean, really, physically and mentally, that part of my life is gone and dead. Um, and I guess I can back that up by saying I had to be resuscitated twice, but um, I don't think that really matters anymore. I think I sometimes use that too much, honestly. But in this new life that God gave me, I see as a way to pay it forward, if you will. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch the movie. It's quite good, and that's where that term came from, really. And it's not that I don't see myself like certain rehabs and stuff market themselves as we're here to save one life at a time. They're not saving anybody's lives. I'm not saving anybody's life. It is, to me, the only way to save your life is to get humble, ask for forgiveness, and reap the rewards of the change. I mean, that's really a good way to put it. Um, to me, say it every time. I wouldn't change a thing about where I came from to my journey with God. Now, I found all sorts of things to do with my time. As you can see, I've decided to learn how to play the guitar, which is actually really fun, and it's a good way to just deal with emotionally what's going on with you. I mean, like I'm gonna have bad days like everybody else, but instead of saying, man, I could use that 5 o'clock drink, pick up and take a guitar lesson, or I got this handy dandy thing this week. I bet you're saying, what is that? Or maybe you're not. It's a Rubik's Cube, of course, you're gonna get that right. But this is a memory Rubik's Cube, is what it can be called. And the reason I'm holding it like that is I'll show you. But that's the only way you can see the actual. Oh, it's fading out on me too quick. All right, so let's do it this way. But anyway, it's heat sensing. So, see, it's green now. It's blue now. But then it goes back to black. So it's if you really want to make yourself mad, I highly recommend it. But it's a good kind of mad because then you want to finish it. But those are just things that I recommend and I do myself to just deal with everyday things. There's a lot of prayer and meditation involved with me too. And those are just, those are gifts that we have that we can use. There's always an argument. People say, well, you don't have to drink. You don't have to use drugs. No. But there's a better way to say you have to take care of your mental health. And it's true. It's actual. It's factual. And, that's just the way it goes. So with that said, let me do devotion. I was getting ready to do a devotion from here. Stuff White People Like. It is one of the funniest books I've actually gone through and read because a lot of it's so true. And I am allowed to say that. It's by Christian Lander. And it's called Stuff White People Like. And he calls another one The White Stuff. So he's got two books, but that is funny. It's a New York Times bestseller, which gets me into, let me run the video for my biggest inspiration in my life, somebody that's helped me through really, really bad times, good times, and etc. Just a great guy. But this is his book, and it's all about learning to listen to music through a sober mind, to godly ears. So see what you think.
Author Evangelist Corey Thomas, a dedicated servant leader whose weapons are spiritual in nature and volatile in impact. Hot off the press, author Evangelist Corey Thomas's new book, Sound Advice, Music and the Battle for Your Mind, Body, and Soul. Matthew 5:13, ye are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has lost his flavor, wherewith shall it be salted? It's author Evangelist Corey Thomas's new book, Sound Advice, Music and the Battle for Your Mind, Body, and Soul. Purchase your copy to help maintain that flavor in your spiritual walk. This book is epic. It's sold on every major online bookstore or go to CoreyThomasMinistries.com. I got my copy. Be sure to get yours. It's author Evangelist Corey Thomas's new book, Sound Advice, Music and the Battle for Your Mind, Body, and Soul. Get your copy today.
So there it is. I know Corey personally, and I mean, I'm just telling you, he's a great guy. You would expect somebody with his accolades in life not to be as humble, down to earth, and just cool. I mean, he's an understanding person, and he gets in his series this thing called life. Corey gets it, and he's definitely a good person to follow or look out for. Facebook, wherever you want to find him, he's there. Like she said, CoreyThomasMinistries.com. All right, so when I do this, I just open it up to any page. It doesn't matter what it is. I do this every time and talk about it, but I don't pre-plan any kind of devotion I do, and most of it I don't pre-plan anyway. I'd rather ramble and find a point myself so we kind of heal together. All right, so let's go. Open the lock. I don't know what this one means. I have not read this one. I've read the other one. But this is day 103, and this is 1 Peter 3:15. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. That's good. Yeah, think about that. Give an answer. Why do I have hope? Why did I have faith? Why did I go from to me, I've been religious most of my life. And when I say that, I mean that person that didn't understand how to practice religion, didn't understand how to pray, but yet I believed in God. It's just my actions didn't really back, you know, faith. And faith is so much different. I am not a pastor, I'm not a minister, but I can tell you that faith is so much different than even hope. And it's a rock solid foundation, man. And that's just the way to put it. All right. So here's the devotion. It's not by me, of course, it's somebody else. And these are mostly anonymous or written by many people. Um, all right. So this is their version based off 1 Peter 3:15. When we purchased our new home, I was given a handful of keys. Some were to the house and others were to a couple of sheds located on the property. I went to check them out and found that one of the sheds was locked with a padlock that had obviously been around for a long time. I looked through the keys and found one that was pretty old looking, thinking that one best matched the lock. I mean, but it wouldn't open. I then tried the other keys with no success. I began to think about the fact that nothing would open that old lock. Finally, there was just one left, a bright, shiny new key that I was sure wouldn't open the ancient lock. But I tried it anyway, and that old beat up lock popped right open. After I had a chance to think about it, I realized that the old lock is a lot like me. Nobody thought I would amount to anything, but all I needed was the right key to unlock my heart, and that key was Christ. We didn't look much of a match, me with all my sin and him so pure and holy, but when he came into my life, I opened right up. All that business about never amounting to anything is just a pack full of lies. God is saying to each of us, you're worth everything to me. Let me unlock your heart. Your prayer for this one is, you gave everything for me, Father. I can't comprehend that, but I'm glad you sent Jesus to unlock my rusty old heart. In Jesus' name, amen. That's really good. This is I didn't say that before, Celebrate Recovery Daily Devotional, 365 days. It's the 30th anniversary, and Celebrate Recovery is a program. Um, uh, uh, Lots of similarities to AA, but it's faith based, and I tend to take a lot from it, honestly. And pick your battles there. But for anybody, the strongest thing I recommend over and over again, is seeking individual therapy as well. If you go to AA and you feel like that's the end all be all, caution you. I'm glad you're sober, but I caution you to make that the end all be all. I really do, and I mean that with a pure and kind heart. Um, there's just a lot to it. So, as usual, if anybody needs anything from me, it's always great talking to everybody on Saturday nights. I love you all, and everybody, of course, God bless on your journey, man. I know it's not tough, and we've all got different versions of what what got us to where we are. And yeah, I'll tell you this much: without God, I'd be nothing, because I factually wouldn't be here. But thank you again, and I'll see you all next week at the same time.